I snapped 3 of the school bully's ribs. I did it because he tore up the only photo I had left of my dead mother, right in front of everyone. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, he was still screaming threats. "My dad is coming. You're dead meat. I'm going to make sure you rot in jail." Moments later, a Rolls-Royce smashed through the school's security gate. A middle-aged man with a terrifying aura stepped out, looking ready to kill. He announced to anyone within earshot that he was going to break the hands of whoever hurt his son. That was, until he stormed into the office and saw me, covered in blood. I stared at the watch on his wrist. It was the startup capital my mother had given him years ago after selling every last heirloom she owned. "Dad," I smiled, though I knew it looked more like a grimace. "You're still wearing that watch." The crack of fracturing ribs had been sharp, cutting through the noise of the crowded hallway. Bryce Sterling's arrogant face twisted instantly, his agonized howls piercing everyone's eardrums. I let go of his collar, letting him drop like a sack of garbage. From his grasp, the shredded pieces of the photograph drifted down like broken butterflies. It was the only keepsake my mom had left me. The red haze in my vision threatened to take over completely. Every string of rationality in my mind had snapped. The screams and gasps around me felt like they were coming from another dimension. I couldn't hear them. I just stared at the debris on the floor. "Psycho. You absolute psycho." Bryce twitched on the floor, cursing between screams of pain. "My dad is here. You're dead. I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cell." I ignored him. I bent down, my hands trembling, and began picking up the pieces one by one. The blood on my fingertips came from where I'd scraped my knuckles against the wall while smashing him. The blood mixed with the dust on the photo, blurring my mother's gentle smile. Soon, paramedics and teachers rushed in, turning the hallway into chaos. Bryce was hoisted onto a stretcher, still glaring at me with venomous eyes, still shouting threats. In the nurse's office, the air was suffocatingly still. The sharp scent of antiseptic burned my nose, mixing with the metallic tang of blood on my clothes. "Harper Vance, how could you be so vicious?" The dean of students was practically spitting in my face. "No matter what Bryce did, you can't put a student in the hospital. This is assault." My homeroom teacher looked heartbroken. "A girl, acting this violent? You're a disgrace to this school." Their accusations hit me like hammer blows, one after another, pounding against my frayed nerves. I didn't say a word. I kept my head down, my eyes fixed on the jagged scraps in my palm that would never fit back together perfectly. My world had shrunk down to these pieces. I didn't care about their blame, the suspension, or even if I went to jail. I only knew that my one connection to her was gone. I don't know how much time passed before a piercing engine roar cut through the air, getting closer. Then came a loud crash, as if a barrier had been violently breached. Screams erupted from the students outside the window. "Oh my God, a Rolls-Royce. It just rammed the school gate. It's Bryce's dad." The office door was thrown open. A middle-aged man in a bespoke suit stormed in, flanked by a group of bodyguards in black. He radiated a terrifying, violent energy. This was Richard Sterling. "Where's my son? Which blind idiot dared to touch my son?" His voice was booming and authoritative, carrying a pressure that brooked no argument. The dean immediately stepped forward, bowing and scraping. "Mr. Sterling, please calm down. Bryce has already been sent to the hospital. His life isn't in danger." "Isn't in danger?" Richard's eyes widened, murderous rage flaring. "I haven't touched a hair on that boy's head his entire life. And today, someone at school breaks his bones? I'm telling you now, I don't care who it is. I'm going to break their hands." His gaze swept the room like a hawk, finally landing on me. On my blood-streaked, bruised face, time seemed to freeze. The apocalyptic rage on Richard's face solidified instantly. His pupils contracted. Shock, disbelief, and a flicker of panic flashed across his well-maintained features. I was looking at him, too. Looking at that face, so familiar yet so strange. Looking at the Patek Philippe glinting on his wrist. I recognized that watch. My mother had sold all the jewelry my grandmother left her to scrape together the money for it. She called it his startup capital. She said a man making his way in the world needed a good watch to command respect. He had used that watch to command respect, sure, but he had never come back to look at us again. I twitched the corner of my mouth. A smile uglier than crying bloomed on my face. Blood and tears mixed together, tasting salty and bitter. "Dad," I whispered, my voice so raspy it didn't sound like mine. "You're still wearing that watch." Boom. Richard's face went white as a sheet. His body went rigid like a statue. The bodyguards behind him exchanged confused glances. The teachers in the office, including the dean who had just been condemning me, dropped their jaws, their eyes nearly popping out of their heads. The whole world fell into a deathly silence. The silence was broken by Richard's heavy breathing. The color drained from his face, then rushed back in a flush of embarrassed purple. He lunged forward, trying to grab my arm, wanting to drag me into a corner. "You come with me." His voice was hushed, laced with panic and a warning he couldn't hide. I violently shook off his hand. The revulsion I felt made me want to vomit. His palm was warm, but to me, it felt like the cold touch of a venomous snake. "Don't touch me." My voice wasn't loud, but it was bone-chillingly cold. Richard's hand froze in midair, his expression twisting. He looked around, seeing the shocked, gossiping faces of the teachers. He realized how bad this looked. "Harper, listen to me." He lowered his voice again, a tone of pleading creeping in that even he didn't notice. "Let's go outside and talk. This isn't the place. Don't worry about money. I'll give you money, a huge amount, enough to keep you comfortable for the rest of your life." Money? It was always money. What else could this man talk about? A web of sorrow and rage wrapped tight around my heart. I laughed. Right there in front of the faculty, I laughed out loud. It was a shrill, mocking sound that echoed in the small office. "Richard Sterling." I looked him dead in the eye, enunciating every word. "In all these years, did you give my mom a single cent? When I was kicked around like a soccer ball between relatives, where were you? Now that I beat up your son, you suddenly remembered to buy me off." My voice rose to a shout. "Do you think your own flesh and blood is worth that little?" Richard was struck dumb, his face flashing between green and white, a vein throbbing in his temple. Just then, the phone in his pocket rang, shattering the moment. He grabbed it like a lifeline. Seeing the caller ID, a sycophantic smile instantly plastered onto his face, a look of groveling submission I had never seen on him before. "Hello, Nessie? Baby, don't worry. I have a small emergency at the company. I'm handling it right now. I'll be at the hospital to see Bryce as soon as I'm done." He turned as he spoke, trying to walk out, try to escape this suffocating purgatory. Nessie? Bryce? Such intimate nicknames. So, in his other family, this is the good husband and father he plays. A surge of nausea hit the top of my skull. I lunged forward before he could react and snatched the phone from his hand. "What are you doing?" Richard shouted, a mix of shock and rage, reaching to grab it back. I dodged sideways, held the phone in my ear, and spoke to the woman on the other end in the clearest, calmest voice I could muster. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling. This is Richard's biological daughter, Harper Vance. I just beat up your son." On the other end of the line, there was a few seconds of dead silence. Then, a scream pierced the receiver. "Ah, Richard, you liar." Richard's face went completely black. All his pretenses, all his dignity were shredded in that instant. The last shred of reason in his eyes was consumed by fury. He raised his hand and swung a vicious slap toward my face. "You little mistake." I didn't dodge. I just looked at him coldly. I watched the face of the man who gave me life twist into something hideous. The slap was intercepted inches from my cheek. It was the dean. He was gripping Richard's wrist tightly, panic written all over his face. "Mr. Sterling, calm down. Calm down. Let's talk about this. You can't hit a student in school." Richard's hand trembled violently in the air, his chest heaving. He wanted to break free, but several male teachers held him back. He looked at me, and his eyes weren't looking at a daughter anymore. He was looking at an enemy who had destroyed his peace. I knew then that the last thin thread of blood connection between us had snapped completely. Less than 20 minutes later, another luxury car sped up and screeched to a halt below the office. A woman in a Chanel suit with exquisite makeup stormed in like a hurricane, trailed by a man in gold-rimmed glasses who looked like a lawyer. This was Vanessa Sterling, Bryce's mother, Richard's current wife. The moment she walked in, a hand with bright red fingernails pointed straight at my nose. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You the bastard child?" Her gaze scraped over me like a knife, full of contempt and loathing. "Look at you, you pathetic little pauper. I don't know what gutter you crawled out of, but you dare touch my son? Who gave you the nerve?" Richard's expression shifted. He rushed to support her. "Nessie, don't get worked up. Think of your health." Then, he turned and barked at me. "Apologize to your stepmother. You disrespectful brat. Have you no manners?" Watching him bow and scrape to that woman while screaming at me was the height of irony. This was my biological father, an adult baby who would trample his own daughter for wealth and status. Vanessa didn't appreciate it. She shook off Richard's hand and pointed a finger at the dean. "I don't care who she is. Today, your school must expel her immediately, and she needs to get on her knees and apologize to my son." "Kneel and apologize?" I laughed out loud, like I'd heard the world's funniest joke. What else? Vanessa lifted her chin, her face twisted with cruelty. You put my son in the hospital, and you think you're walking out of here? I'm telling you, if you don't kneel today, I'll make sure you go to prison. The Sterling family lawyers aren't for show. I met her gaze without flinching and stated the facts calmly. Your son tore up my mother's memorial photo first. The air in the office solidified again. The teachers looked surprised. Richard's expression stiffened for a second. His eyes darted away, avoiding mine. Vanessa paused, then screeched, "It's just a damn photo. What's the big deal?" So he ripped it. Just print another one. My son is lying in a hospital bed with 3 broken ribs. Do you have any idea how serious that is? Just a photo? Richard chimed in almost simultaneously, using a dismissive, impatient tone. She's right, Harper. Why would you beat your brother so badly over a picture? He's young. He doesn't know better. You're the older sister. Shouldn't you be the bigger person? Boom. That sentence exploded in my brain. All my calm, all my armor crumbled. Blood rushed to my extremities, and my body shook with absolute rage. That wasn't just a photo. That was the only trace my mom left in this world. It was my only comfort during countless freezing nights in foster homes. And now he, my biological father, breezily said it was just a photo. I stared at him, the hatred in my eyes practically solidifying. Fine. I squeezed the word through my teeth, my voice terrifyingly quiet. You want an apology? Sure. I looked at them, enunciating every syllable. Have Bryce go to my mother's grave, get on his knees, and beg until she forgives him. Otherwise, no deal. The moment my words landed, Vanessa exploded. You're dreaming. Who do you think you are, telling my son to kneel to a dead woman? She screamed, looking ready to lunge and claw my eyes out. Richard held her back, his face livid as he glared at me. Harper Vance, don't push your luck. Push my luck. I countered. My mother's memorial photo was shredded. You people are calling me a bastard to my face, and just because my brother is in the hospital, I'm a villain? Richard, is your heart located in your wallet? Negotiations had officially broken down. Vanessa's lawyer stepped forward, his voice robotic. Ms. Vance, given the severe bodily harm caused to the victim, we are officially notifying you that we will be pressing charges for assault and battery. We have the hospital reports and evidence ready. Expect a subpoena. His cold tone suggested my conviction was already a done deal. Richard tried to play the hypocritical peacemaker from the sidelines. Harper, look, making a scene helps no one. Just apologize to Vanessa and your brother, and we can discuss the rest later. Dad is doing this for your own good. For my own good? I sneered. For my good means kneeling to the person who desecrated my mother's memory? For my good means teaming up with outsiders to corner me. Watching them play good cop/bad cop so seamlessly was nauseating. They had the numbers, the money, and the power. They thought they had eaten this powerless orphan girl alive. Unfortunately, they miscalculated. I wasn't the little girl crying over a photo in the dark anymore. I slowly pulled my phone from my pocket. In front of everyone, I pressed play. A clear recording blasted from a speaker. It was Bryce's arrogant voice. Your mom's been dead for ages. Why keep a dead person's photo? It's a waste of space. I bet you're just an unwanted bastard, just like your dead ghost of a mother. Then, the sound of paper ripping, and my suppressed roar of anger, followed by the scuffle and Bryce's screams. The recording was short, but it reconstructed the entire event perfectly. He threw the insults first. He desecrated the photo first. The entire fuse was lit by him. In the office, the teachers began to whisper, their looks toward Richard and Vanessa changing. The dean's face looked like a spilled paint palette. Richard and Vanessa's expressions shifted from triumphant to shocked, then to panicked. Especially Vanessa, her face, caked in expensive foundation, twisted with rage and embarrassment. Her lawyer frowned. Clearly, this recording introduced a variable that threatened their guaranteed victory. I stopped the recording. The phone felt hot in my palm from how hard I was gripping it. I looked up, meeting their stunned gazes, the corner of my mouth hooking up in a cold arc. Assault and battery, who ends up in a juvenile detention center first, is still up for debate. The recording changed the nature of everything. Schools care most about reputation. A bullying incident involving hate speech is far more serious than a simple student brawl, especially when the bully is the city's most famous rich kid. The dean immediately switched masks and started trying to smooth things over. After hours of mediation, the school finally gave a verdict that punished both sides. Me, 1 major suspension. Bryce, 1 major suspension and a school-wide censure. Both parties would waive medical fees and legal action. For Richard and Vanessa, this result was a slap in the face. They wanted to ruin me, but instead, their son was branded with a school bully mark on his record. Vanessa was shaking with rage, but helpless. She spat out a, "Just you wait," and stormed off with her lawyer. Richard stayed behind. He cornered me in a quiet spot near the school gate. The setting sun stretched his shadow long across the ground, looking like a looming monster. He dropped the act. His face held only cold disgust and impatience. He pulled a black bank card from his wallet and threw it at me. "There's $50,000 on this." His tone was like he was dismissing a beggar. "The pin is your birthday. Take the money, transfer schools immediately, get out of the city, and get as far away as possible. Never appear in front of us again." The card landed lightly on the ground with a crisp clack. 50,000. He thought 50 grand could buy off a decade of pain and neglect? That it could erase the tragedy of my mother dying in resentment. An indescribable humiliation and rage rolled in my chest like magma. I bent down and picked up the card. Then, under his stunned gaze, I used every ounce of my strength to throw the card right back into his hypocritical face. "Richard Sterling, listen to me." My voice wasn't loud, but every word was ice. "The game has just begun." I stared at his face, which was starting to warp with anger, and declared, word by word, "I'm not leaving, and I'm transferring into Bryce's class." I didn't look at him again. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard his heavy, gasping breaths, choking on rage he couldn't unleash. I knew he received my declaration of war. From today on, I wasn't the Harper Vance who could be slaughtered. I was here to collect a debt. For me, and for my dead mom. I kept my word. The next day, I handed my transfer application to the dean's office. Maybe Richard exerted pressure hoping to contain me, or maybe the school just wanted to keep the trouble in one place, but my application was approved unusually fast. When I walked into the honors class, clutching my books, the room went dead silent. Dozens of eyes shot toward me. Curious, disdainful, mocking. I was the school's famous psycho, the girl who put Bryce Sterling in a hospital. Bryce clearly hadn't expected me to dare enter his territory. He was sitting by the window, face still bruised. His shock quickly morphed into deep malice. The lackeys around him immediately started jeering. "Yo, isn't that the maniac? She dares to come to our class. Thick skin, huh? Beats someone up and acts like nothing happened." My new seat was in the last row, a forgotten corner near the trash. As soon as I sat down, the trouble started. During class, paper balls hit my back. Between periods, my desk was flooded with ink. By the end of the day, my books vanished from my locker, only to be found in the garbage can at the end of the hall, covered in filth. I didn't cry. I didn't tell the teacher. I knew it was useless. In this little kingdom centered around Bryce, the teachers turn a blind eye. I just silently picked my books out of the trash one by one and wiped them down with tissues. Around me, Bryce's goons roared with laughter. Bryce leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the show with a cruel, smug grin. I wiped the last book clean and placed it neatly on the desk. Then I stood up. Under the stunned gaze of the entire class, I walked step by step until I was standing right in front of Bryce. His smile froze. He instinctively straightened up, eyes flashing with wariness. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly despite the bravado. I didn't say anything. I just lifted my leg and, with everything I had, kicked his desk over. Crash. A deafening noise. The desk, piled high with books, stationery, and snacks, flipped violently, scattering debris everywhere. The classroom went deathly silent. Everyone was frozen by the sudden explosion of violence. I looked down at him, my eyes devoid of any warmth. "You touch my stuff one more time." My voice was calm and clear, carrying an undeniable brutality. "And next time, it won't be the ribs. It'll be your legs." Bryce's face turned purple, a mix of shock and fury. His lips quivered, wanting to say something tough, but under my dead-eyed stare, the words died in his throat. He was scared. That kick hadn't just flipped his desk. It had shattered the fake authority he had built in this class. I coldly scanned the slack-jawed lackeys around him, then turned and walked back to my seat. From start to finish, not a single person dared to step in. Violence doesn't solve every problem, but it effectively shuts some people up. The day after I kicked over the desk, my life in class improved significantly. No one dared to pour water on my desk or throw my books anymore. But the atmosphere of isolation grew heavier. I was like a ghost walking through the room. No one spoke to me. Everyone walked around me. Bryce obviously wasn't going to let it go. He went home and poured poison in his mother's ear. The next afternoon, Vanessa stormed the school. This time she got smart. She didn't act like a shrew immediately. Instead, She rushed to our classroom door, and in front of the whole class and the crowd in the hallway, she burst into tears. Where's the justice? My son is bullied in school, abused, and now his desk is being overturned. Is a no law anymore. She cried like a tragic heroine, listing my atrocities between sobs, painting herself as a helpless mother trying to protect her child. This Harper Vance, she thinks because she has a little background, she can do whatever she wants. My son is terrified to even look at her. He has PTSD. Why hasn't the school expelled a student like this? Do we have to wait until someone dies? She was an expert at manipulating emotions. The students who didn't know the truth started whispering and pointing at me. So she was bullying Bryce. She looks quiet, but I guess she's vicious. Poor Bryce. Public opinion instantly swung to her side. Bryce hid behind Vanessa, looking at me with a mix of grievance and venom, a smug smirk tucked in the corner of his mouth. I stood in the classroom, not moving, not defending myself. I just watched her quietly. I watched her twist black into white, putting on her performance. Like watching a circus clown. Just as Vanessa's act reached its climax, screaming for the principal to come out and give her an explanation, a cold voice broke her monologue. Ma'am, you're lying. All eyes snapped to the source. It was Julian Ashcroft, the class genius, the aloof boy who sat in the front row and ignored everything. He stood up, holding a phone high. He walked up to Vanessa and, in front of everyone, tapped the screen. The video was shaky, but the content was crystal clear. It was from yesterday. It showed Bryce's goons throwing my books into the trash, gathering around to mock me. The end of the video was a close-up of me silently picking up my books and Bryce's gloating face. I accidentally filmed this yesterday. Julian's voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly. I think the video makes it pretty clear who is bullying whom. The hallway erupted. The narrative flipped instantly. The students who had been pointing at me now looked at Vanessa and Bryce with complicated expressions. Vanessa's crying cut off abruptly. She stared at the video of her son's masterpiece, her face cycling through colors, green, white, red. She tried to snatch the phone to delete it, but Julian dodged her effortlessly. Under the public gaze, she looked like a pop balloon. All her arrogance and fake victimhood vanished, leaving only embarrassment and disgrace. In the end, she glared at me with pure hatred, grabbed a pale-faced Bryce, and fled the scene. I looked at Julian. He pocketed his phone and looked back at me. Sunlight streamed through the window, rimming his sharp profile in gold. He gave me a slight nod, said nothing, and sat back down, acting as if the guy who just stood up for justice wasn't him at all. This was the first time since school started that anyone had spoken up for me. I sent a silent thank you to his back. That sudden beam of light made the cold isolation feel a little warmer. Vanessa had been humiliated at school, so Richard couldn't sit still. He personally intervened, citing family unity, to force us into a dinner at a high-end restaurant, a so-called family meal. Inside the private room, the crystal chandelier was blinding. The tableware looked like art. Richard sat at the head, Vanessa and Bryce on one side, and me alone on the other. A massive round table separated us like an uncrossable canyon. Harper. Richard cleared his throat, putting on his patriarch act. We're family. We shouldn't hold grudges. What happened before was Bryce's fault, and I've disciplined him. He paused, then pivoted. But you need to reflect on yourself too. A girl shouldn't be so aggressive. You need to learn gratitude and forgiveness. After all, we are family. Gratitude? I chewed on the word. It tasted absurd. Thank you for abandoning my mom and me. Or thank you for letting me bounce between foster homes for 10 years. Richard's face darkened. Vanessa immediately chimed in with her sarcastic tone. Oh, please. Richard is doing this for your own good. Giving you money, letting you live a good life, and you're still not satisfied? Some people are just ungrateful wolves you can never feed enough. Bryce buried his head in his phone, occasionally snorting, acting like none of this concerned him. Fake. Thoroughly fake. This dinner wasn't for reconciliation. It was a new round of moral kidnapping and psychological suppression. The anger in my chest ignited into an inferno. I stood up abruptly. Under their shocked gazes, I reached out, grabbed the corner of the heavy tablecloth, and with every ounce of strength I possessed, I yanked it. Crash! The table full of expensive dishes, soup, and wine flew into the air, accompanied by the ear-splitting sound of shattering porcelain. It all splashed directly onto Richard and Vanessa. Vanessa shrieked, her designer dress covered in grease and stains, looking utterly wretched. Richard froze, likely never dreaming I would do something so rebellious. I pointed at his nose, which was dripping with soup. The resentment and pain of a decade erupted. Family? You have a nerve to talk to me about family? My voice shook with adrenaline, but it was powerful. When my mom was sick and called you, begging you to visit her, where were you? When I was treated like a burden by relatives, kicked out in the middle of winter, almost freezing to death on the street, where were you? When people pointed at me and called me a bastard with no father, where were you, Dad? What right do you have to lecture me? What right do you have to demand my gratitude? Every question was a knife, stabbing straight into Richard's heart. He was struck speechless, his face going from shock to rage, and finally to ash gray. You unfilial daughter. He roared in humiliation, pointing a shaking finger at me. Unfilial? I gave a tragic smile. From the day you abandoned my mother, I didn't have a father. I dropped those words, ignored their pathetic state, and turned to walk out of the room. I shut the door on their screams and curses. This fake family dinner had collapsed completely, and the break between him and me was finally absolute. I felt an unprecedented lightness the moment I flipped that table. But I also realized that reactive fighting wasn't enough. I had to go on the offensive. I needed evidence that would bury them. My first lead was my mother's death. I had always thought it was illness, but Richard's reaction today made me suspicious. I went to Julian. After I poured out my suspicions, he was silent for a long time, then agreed to help. His family seemed to have connections. A few days later, he gave me several addresses. These are your mother's old neighbors and friends. Maybe they know something. I tracked them down one by one. Many had moved or refused to talk. Finally, in an old tenement building in the city, I found the woman who had been my mother's best friend. When she saw me, she froze for a long time, then her eyes reddened. You look just like her. Under my persistent questioning, she finally sighed and revealed a buried past. Your mom. She didn't die of illness. My whole body shook. Back then, your dad, Richard, hooked up with his current wife, a daughter from a rich family. They offered him investment money, but on the condition that he cut ties with your mom completely. Your mom refused to divorce at first. Richard came over every day to make a scene. Later, I don't know what method he used, but he forced her to sign the papers. A few days after signing, she fell from the balcony of your old apartment. The police called it an accidental fall. But us neighbors, we felt something was wrong. How could it be that coincidental? Divorce one day, accident the next. Later, Richard gave your grandmother's family a huge sum of money to stop them from investigating. They took the money and sent you to your uncle's and told everyone your mom died sick. Her words were like thunderclaps exploding my mind. Accidental fall? Hush money? My grandmother, whom I had loved, had participated in selling me out. My mother's death wasn't an accident. It was a conspiracy. I hadn't just been abandoned by my father. I had been sold by all my kin for cash. Grief and rage swept over me, spinning the world until I could barely stand. I held onto the wall, shaking uncontrollably, not from sadness, but from a fire of revenge burning from my marrow, threatening to incinerate everything. Richard, Vanessa, and those so-called relatives who took the money and kept their mouths shut. None of you will escape. I told Julian what I learned. He was quiet for a long time, then said, testimony isn't enough. We need hard evidence. With his tech support, we started a secret investigation. He used his skills to breach Richard's company intranet, looking for traces of asset transfers from back then. I worked on gathering external evidence, physical proof of the coercion, and evidence of his affair with Vanessa during the marriage. It was harder than I imagined, but we found crumbs. Records of Richard buying luxury cars and property for Vanessa while still married to my mom. A draft of the divorce agreement with Richard's threatening handwritten notes in the margins. The chain of evidence wasn't complete, but it was enough to make Richard sweat. I decided to rattle the cage. During a chance encounter with Bryce, I casually mentioned that I held stuff that could ruin your dad and my lovely stepmother. Bryce was stupid, but not deaf. He ran home in a panic and told Vanessa. That kicked the hornet's nest. Vanessa panicked. 2 days later, on my way home from school, 2 strange men blocked me in an alley. Little girl, hand over what you have, and nobody gets hurt. The leader sounded nasty. I was ready. The moment they grabbed for my bag, I activated the panic alarm in my pocket and hit record on my phone. I didn't surrender. I used the debris in the alley to stall them. When I was pushed to the ground and my bag was snatched, the sound of sirens approached. Julian had called the police. The men realized the setup and ran, dropping the bag, but ran right into the arriving officers. I went to the station with the video of the assault and my bag, which contained no real evidence. That night, a video titled "Wealthy Matriarch Hires Thugs to Rob Stepdaughter," along with an anonymous tip, was sent to every tabloid that loved high society scandals. The next day, Sterling Corp's stock dipped. The storm of public opinion was brewing. and I had fired the first shot. Things spiraled faster than I expected. Rich family feud, evil stepmother bullying, the fraudulent rise of a social climber. The headlines went viral. Richard's company took a massive hit. Stocks plummeted for days. Partners pulled out. He was desperate. Finally, he asked to meet. Same high-end restaurant. Same private room. But this time, no food. Just him. In just a few days, he looked 10 years older. Eyes sunken, face exhausted. He looked at me with a complex mix of anger and unwillingness, but mostly defeated resignation. Say it. What do you want? His voice was hoarse. I don't want anything, I said calmly. I know I wronged you and your mother. He took a deep breath, lowering his posture in front of me for the first time. I was wrong about the past. I admit it. He slid a document across the table. This is a transfer agreement for 10% of the company's shares and a check for $2 million. As long as you stop, destroy the evidence, and never mention the past again, this is all yours. 10%. $2 million. For him, this was bleeding out. I looked at his hypocritical face, still trying to solve everything with money, and I laughed. It was a laugh of pure contempt and sorrow. Richard, do you still think I'm doing this for money? I stood up, walked over, and looked down at him. I don't want a penny. I want you to go to my mother's grave. I stared into his eyes, enunciating every word. I want you to tell her exactly how you met Vanessa, how you forced Mom to divorce, how she died, everything. I want you to confess it all, right in front of her, and then get on your knees and beg. Richard's face turned iron gray, kneeling to a dead woman, airing his dirty laundry to the world. That was worse than killing him. It trampled on every ounce of dignity he had. Impossible. He practically roared. Is it? My smile turned icy. I turned toward the door, leaving him with one last sentence. Then tell it to the judge. I didn't give him another chance. I took everything Julian and I had gathered, the transfer records proving the affair, the coerced divorce draft, the video of Vanessa's hired thugs, the bank statement to the hush money paid to my grandmother, and compiled it into a massive expose. Then, with Julian's help, we posted it publicly via an untraceable overseas server. The article hit the internet like a nuclear bomb. Overnight, Richard's carefully crafted image of self-made success story and family man collapsed. Wife killer, fraud, black widow in a suit. The label stuck fast. His company's stock flatlined, heading for bankruptcy. Angry investors besieged his office building. To save themselves, Vanessa's family immediately cut ties, filed for divorce, and withdrew all capital. Abandoned by allies, reputation in tatters. He fell from the clouds straight into the mud. Finally, crushed by the public outcry and mental strain, Richard broke. On a rainy morning, he went alone to my mother's grave. No media, no audience. He took off his expensive suit, wore plain black clothes, and dropped to his knees. The rain soaked his hair and clothes, but he didn't move. He looked like a statue of penance. He knelt from dawn until late into the night. I didn't go closer. I stood in the distance, watching through the curtain of rain. I watched the man finally pay the price for his sins. Bryce became the school's biggest joke. His arrogance evaporated. He transferred schools shortly after and vanished. Vanessa divorced, taking what little assets remained. But because of her reputation as an accomplice to attempted robbery and bullying, she was shunned from her high society circles. The relatives who took the hush money were exposed and suffered the contempt of their neighbors. Everyone who had hurt us got what they deserved. Watching that kneeling figure in the distance, I didn't feel the thrill of revenge, just the calm of dust settling. I turned and walked out of the cemetery. The rain stopped, and a rainbow cut across the sky. I knew I had put a period at the end of the sentence for my mother and for the old me. From now on, I would take her love and walk in my own brand new life. Story complete.